All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending. It's 1 o'clock now, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I am the marketing coordinator for Extra Help, and we started these webinars back in November, and today you've joined us for Extra Help's Workplace Excellence webinar. And today the title of the webinar is How High Can You Raise Your Bar and Really Grow Your Business? And our presenter, Suzie Andrews, will be introduced and begin momentarily. The workplace webinars are an exciting new program that Extra Help has started for all of our clients and colleagues to help manage their workforce and changes that come along that and help increase workplace efficiency. A couple of things to mention before we begin. I'm going to unmute everybody that's involved today so there can be fluid conversation. If you have questions, feel free to pop in and to do that during the presentation. So we will get started. Today our presenter is Suzie Andrews, Senior Associate of Sandler Training Stark Associates. Suzie has had many experience over the past 25 years with sales management, and leadership experience to her clients. She works with presidents, CEOs, and business owners, assisting them with overall development and improvement of their sales organizations and the best practice tools. Today she will answer some important questions about our sales team and hopefully help our companies grow. And I'm excited to see what she can teach us today. All right, Suzie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will give you mouse capabilities so you can kind of move through the slides.
Great. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Erin. And we're going to take, we've got about an hour, and we're going to focus on really, how can you raise the bar from a sales perspective and really grow your business. So I'm going to ask really some questions of you. So if you're on the line, I think Erin had asked everybody to print off the PowerPoint or at least have some notes, some paper that you can take some notes. Because the purpose of this session like this is for you to hopefully get a recognition of some areas in your business on the sales side that you could improve, that maybe you're not looking at today, or you could do some things a little differently. So I'm hoping that you're up for a challenge. That's typically how we work, is challenge you a little bit, hopefully get you to see things differently and walk away with some actionable items to take to grow your business. So if we jump to our next slides, it's a little bit slower. First one says, I trust that you came to be challenged. So we already kind of threw that out, but quick questions if you answered this question. How many legs does a dog have if you call the tail a leg? I mean, what do you think the typical answer is? It's typically 5. But what's the reality? There really are only 4 legs on a dog. So the question seems a little silly, but how often are you looking at your sales organization with a really clear, objective set of eyes? And that's what the question is really meant to set up for this discussion, that you kind of have to take off your blinders, take off your filters, and be willing to look at the organization from a different perspective. This is where I want you to do a bit of an exercise. The typical sales force on any given day is, and you can fill in the blank, 17% effective. It's a scary number. If you think about your organization, I'm not saying it's 17, but what is it? And if you look at 17, and maybe it's 20, maybe it's 25, but what do you think it would take? What would happen to your business if that number grew by 5, 10, 20 points? And what would that mean to your bottom line? So hopefully we're going to get into the topics we're going to get into today, and hopefully you realize some of these in your business are going to help you really define what are the areas that you can change. So if you look at the contributing factors, usually we do an exercise here where we have you write them down, and I do some interaction here. But because we have a short period of time, I'm going to jump into these. The top contributing factors, and we typically come up with 5. We give people the opportunity to come up with 7, but the 5, the first one is business owners overestimate the competency of their sales organization. So they overestimate the competency of the sales management, and they estimate the competency of the salespeople. Often we're looking at Are these people experienced? Have they sold before? Do they know my products and services? That is a subjective way of evaluating them, but do you really know if they actually are out there hunting, meaning finding new prospects? Once they find those prospects, are they capable of getting past gatekeepers and getting to the decision makers? Once they get to the decision makers, are they able to really ask the right questions, qualify the business, and move that process forward to closing the business? A lot of salespeople spend a lot of time with prospects that shouldn't even be in the pipeline, and a lot of salespeople spend time on prospects that they never close. Number 2, a camper culture prevails. A camping culture is one where salespeople are comfortable. They're not willing to push themselves out of their comfort zone. They've got a nice air-conditioned tent with a mattress, a refrigerator, a freezer, everything in the world they could need in there, and by the way, there's no reason to come out of that tent. So are your people camping? Are they pushing themselves out of their comfort zone? Do they have clearly defined personal goals and business targets, and are they driving to accomplish those? If not, you are missing significant opportunity from a potential growth standpoint. Number 3, accountability is absent, which means there are people in the organization that may look like they are functioning, and maybe they're telling you they're out there selling. But is there a process whereby there are very clear behaviorally based sales plans? Are there management processes where there's consistent weekly and often daily conversations to manage that behavior and ensure that the results are where they need to be? Number 4, there's little, if any, hands-on sales management. The single most underutilized component of any sales team is the sales manager. So you've got to ask yourself, if it's me and I'm the owner of the business or president or CEO and I'm still managing, how much of my time am I spending managing the salespeople? If you have a sales manager, are they managing the people or are they managing deals? Meaning, are they simply going out and doing deals with salespeople, or are they really walking through the functions of management? And the 5th is the hiring process is compromised. So question I usually ask folks here is, does anybody ever had a mishire? So anybody on the phone, anybody ever had a mishire and they've hired a salesperson or a sales manager that didn't work out? Did anybody say yes to that? Okay, guess not. That means you're the lucky folks. Most people, in terms of hiring, have had one or often many salespeople or sales managers that aren't a good fit for the organization and they don't actually get the results that they're looking for. Clear process for what the criteria should be on who I should be hiring absolutely has to be spelled out. A solid recruiting process, a well-thought-out, well-executed interviewing process, and a strong onboarding process to put people in a position of being successful when they are hired. These things are often missing, which means that hiring process is significantly compromised. So those are our biggest contributing factors. It's all about BAT. In our world, BAT is success. So we call this the success triangle. The behavior side of the triangle, or the B side of the triangle, is really all about the what. What is it that a salesperson or a sales team needs to do to be successful? If we were going to get specific to a salesperson, the B are things like, are there clearly defined personal goals? Are there clearly defined targets for prospecting and territory planning? Is there a behaviorally based sales plan defined? Is there a system to track and measure it? And is there a process for accountability? All of that is what falls under behavior. The attitude side of the triangle is what attitude, strengths, or weaknesses might somebody have that would cause them to be successful or cause them to fail. Some of the biggest are, do I have a burning desire and am I unconditionally committed to selling? Do I take responsibility for my results? Or am I an excuse maker who blames the economy, the marketplace, lack of marketing literature, all kinds of excuses that are their excuses and a victim mentality for not meeting results. Also, do they have a mental toughness? Selling is difficult. Do they have a strong need for approval, which means they have a tough time asking tough questions? They have a tough time dealing with prospects who they think just should be their friends, so it's very difficult to ask tough questions or even to close the business. Do they have a fear of rejection, meaning they are so afraid to hear the no that they do everything to avoid the no, and their pipeline looks full, but they're never closing any business? So that's the first component of competency. That attitude is there's two pieces of competency. That's the first piece. The second piece is the T, which is technique or skill set. So do your people have a clearly defined sales process? That's a technique. Do they know how to qualify, properly ask questions, and listen in order to identify needs, budget, and decision process? Do they know how to close? Or are they expecting that if they just keep persistently follow up, that eventually the deal will close? So questioning, listening, cold calling skills, qualifying skills, sales process, all fall under the technique side. So a question you have to ask yourself if you're thinking about your organization is, do you know if your salespeople are doing the aligned behavior? And do you know if the competency of your team aligns with your strategy? If you don't know the competency of your team, you've got to ask yourself if you've got a clear alignment, because that may be a huge issue there. If you don't have goals, plans, systems to track on behavior, that would be a check mark for you to think about as we get to the end of the session on things you need to be doing differently. A question. If you owned a manufacturing plant, how many times would you walk by your most expensive and most critical piece of equipment if it was operating at a 17% efficiency every day? Kind of an uncomfortable question to ask, but the reality is most organizations' sales teams are operating at a minimum effectiveness, not a maximum. But there's often no training, no development, and not a lot of hands-on management, so that operational inefficiency simply creates a day-to-day lack of function. So when we talk about raising the bar in a sales organization, we're talking about getting out of the mindset of mediocrity. So I'm going to talk about sales teams that are living in sales mediocrity. And again, a gut check for you is you may not be, but you have to ask yourself the question, if you are, being willing to confront that as I go through this and being willing to identify the areas to change. So one of the areas that sales mediocrity is embedded is that business owners and senior managers tend to overestimate the competency of their sales teams. So if you look at this quadrant, you've got technique on one side, you've got attitude on the bottom axis. If you look at where the ideal salesperson should be, they should be in that quadrant A, which means they have a solid foundation from an attitude perspective. It means that they have a good toolkit of techniques. So why would somebody fall into that C? Well, a scary fact, and we evaluate thousands of people every year, and we've been doing this for 15 years, is that most salespeople we evaluate, over 90%, fall into that C quadrant, which means that they're missing attitude strengths, and which means they have the weaknesses, and they're missing technique. The reality of that is sales is an area where I will hire a salesperson and think they just should know what to do. They should have the skill sets. They've sold before. I just need to point them in the right direction. They should be able to go get it done. So again, very little management, very little coaching, very little training and development. So we're not helping to develop competency in sales teams. We actually perpetuate incompetence. So again, why then is there sales mediocrity so deeply embedded in so many companies? There's something we call the buyer-seller dance. the average salesperson on any given day, if you were going to videotape them, their sales process would sound something like this. They walk into a sales call. They do a little small talk. They talk a little bit about why, each other, looking for something in common. And then the prospect typically takes control of the process by asking the salesperson one of these questions or something like it. Why are you here? Why should I buy from you? Why are you better than my current vendor? Tell me about your company. Any of those questions. What does the salesperson typically do at that point? We respond. We talk about our company. We tell them why they should buy from us. We tell them why we're great. Once we've given them everything they need, they know about us. They know about our products and services. What do they typically want next? Typically, it's a price or a proposal. We're usually happy to oblige because it means that they're interested. We quickly give a timeline for how we're going to put that together or when we're going to put it together. The prospect typically at that point says, sounds great. Give me a call in a couple weeks, and I'll let you know where I stand with this. It can come in a lot of different flavors and can be said in a lot of different ways. But the salesperson then goes into the mode of, okay, no problem, thanks a lot, I'll call you back in a couple weeks. 2 weeks fly by, salesperson starts the process over, picks up the phone to call, and what typically happens? Usually it's voicemail. So I get into follow-up mode, and my prospect disappears. So if you relate that to this buyer-seller dance, you have a salesperson who goes into a call looking to fact-find, get job specifications and needs, and you've got a prospect who's somewhat interested or showing some interest, or they wouldn't be meeting with you. The salesperson then goes into demo, presentation, or proposal. The prospect seems somewhat motivated by saying, can I have a proposal? Can you give me a bid? The salesperson is looking for some kind of a commitment or a close or a contract. And the prospect at that point is just looking for more information. The salesperson tries to deal with the stalls and objections. The prospect avoids commitment. The salesperson gets into follow-up mode, and the prospect disappears. So that's the buyer's process. It's pretty typical. In any industry I work with, we do this exercise with these folks when we start working with them. Every single prospect we work with will basically map this out themselves and tell you this is what they go through, somewhat of the Groundhog's Day. So how do you get out of this process? Well, you have to have a process of your own. So when I asked earlier how many folks had a process that they worked from a sales process, most companies don't. So if you don't have a sales process where you can get in control, the buyer's process is going to win. And you're looking at what that buyer's process looks like, which the end result of that is could be what looks like a lot of activity in a salesperson's pipeline, but nothing's closing, or a very low close ratio. So a gut check question again, go back to your sales organization, evaluate your pipeline. What does your close ratio look like? If your close ratio is anywhere below 40%, you really need to evaluate whether you have a process and whether your salespeople can effectively qualify. So why, again, is sales mediocrity so deeply embedded in many companies? The camper culture prevails, which we talked about earlier as one of the 7 contributing factors. So if you ask yourself the question, and you look at camping, we talked about that. There's really 4 areas where salespeople 4 buckets they fall into. You've got the A player. The A player salesperson is a salesperson that wants help, wants support, wants guidance, wants coaching, wants training, and is always looking for help. They're driving, they're successful, and they're always looking to learn and get better. The camper, as I described earlier, is somebody who's pretty comfortable. You know what, I don't need coaching, I don't need training. If you just leave me alone, let me do my job, I'll be good, I'm going to perform. And they may perform, but they perform at a level significantly below where they're capable. The quitter is somebody who shows up for work, but they really don't get much done. they've mentally quit, but they're still showing up and collecting a paycheck. The fourth is what we call a ghost. Ghosts are salespeople that are haunting your organization. They probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place, and they probably are the type of people that they're negative, they're always talking negative, and you really could probably never see what they're accomplishing on a day-to-day basis. So take a moment and think about your sales team. Put your sales team into those 4 buckets. Look at how many campers do I have, how many climbers do I have, how many ghosts, how many quitters. The plan, the first place you go, if you do have somebody who's a ghost, is you fire your ghosts or you deselect them. Because they're haunting your organization, they become a cancer. The next place you go is to your quitters. Your quitters are your people that, they've just at this point checked out. If you can get to a quitter and find out why they quit, often you can quickly get them back on track, get them motivated, get their plans in place, and they can move into that A-player category. So while you've gotten rid of the ghosts, you've fixed your quitters, because either they're moving up or they're moving out. What haven't you done? I haven't dealt with my campers. But how are my campers feeling right about now as it relates to, the ghosts are gone, fired them. The quitters, boy, you know what? See, those people have moved up. Wow, they're seeing the results happening and things changing, and those people are actually being successful. These campers are getting uncomfortable. So they're starting to peek out of the tent and figure out I either need to step up, push myself out of my comfort zone, or I may need to go find somewhere else to camp. So you often see in sales organizations people that have a 12 to 18-month cycle on a resume. Beware. People that have a 12 to 18-month cycle on a resume are people that are typically quitters or campers. So why then is sales mediocrity so deeply embedded? Accountability is painfully absent. So when you think about accountability and you think about what it takes to build accountability, the key is knowing, do I even know what I should be holding people accountable to? So if you looked at your organization today, are there clearly defined objectives? And what I mean by objectives is not a number, because the problem with managing to a number is it's history. If I'm holding a salesperson accountable to a monthly revenue goal of, I'm going to throw a number out, $50,000, and I'm, let's say, at $10,000, I could say, you know what, boss, this guy's out of town, this person's been really busy, I've been calling this one, they're not calling me back, the economy's bad, the marketplace is bad. I can have 1,000 excuses as to why I'm not able to be accountable. If you take that number and break it down by behavior, how many sales calls do I need to make a week? How many cold calls do I need to make a week? How many prospects do I need to be in front of in a face-to-face meeting? How many accounts do I need to be in a second or third meeting with so that I know I'm moving them through the process? How many presentations or demos do I need to do, and how many closes do I need? If I can build a formula around that and I manage that on a weekly basis, I have a way to hold people accountable. I can start to contract out those excuses and get people to focus on what they're in control of. So if you look at this inner circle, outer circle, Stephen Covey had a concept, which we stole this from him, that said people often live in one or the other of these circles. The circle of control is the circle that I know what I need to do, I'm committed to it, I take responsibility for it, and I'm accountable to it. People who live in the circle of concern are worried. They're worried about everything, and then they make excuses about everything, except for what could be in that inner circle. So clearly defining what should be in the inner circle is a hugely significant part of whether you can have any form of accountability. The other side is, if you have accountability, that means there's a consequence. As I usually engage with companies, one of the first questions I ask is, do you feel you hold your sales team accountable? I'd say 60-70% of the time I get a yes. The others have just realized they don't. So if they tell me yes, the simple question is, well, walk me through that process. There isn't one, nor is there ever a consequence. So liken that to a child who you're trying to teach good behavior to, but when they do something bad, there's no consequence to it. It's the same process. If there isn't something that will sting when I don't do, why would I make sure I do it? So is there accountability? If not, ask yourself that question. So again, why then is sales mediocrity so deeply embedded? Usually there's little, if any, effective hands-on sales management. So when you think about it, sales management is the functions of supervising, coaching, training, mentoring, and recruiting. Supervising is the key to sales management in that it relates to what am I doing from a goal-setting perspective, what am I doing from a territory and sales planning perspective. Do I have territory plans that actually look at and evaluate where the greatest potential is with my existing customers? Do I know what they buy today? Do I know what they're capable of buying in the future? Do I know how many people in that organization can buy from me? Am I creating relationships with each one of them? Or am I the type of salesperson that I get up every day and I decide who I'm going to go visit and who I'm going to speak to? And by the way, are those the people that are my friends, not the people where the biggest opportunities are? So have you built a gold, silver, bronze plan for managing and growing your current customers? Do you know the ones that should be gold? And do you know that the reason they're gold would be based on their potential, not on their existing revenue? And have you targeted salespeople to that potential? Or again, are they getting up every day and deciding where they're going to drive their car or what call they're going to start their day with? Coaching, well, I'm going to jump back for a minute. So the second piece of supervising is if I have territory plans, I've got my behavior sales plans, do I have a consistent management process that's unconditionally committed to? Meaning, do I meet with my salespeople one-on-one, not as a group, on a weekly basis? Do I walk through their territory plans, their sales plans, and their pipeline? Do I have a process to walk through the territory plans, sales plans, and processes in order to identify what they are accountable to and what they actually have been accountable to and where they haven't been? Do I have a process for holding people accountable? And do I have a process within that management to put people on plan? I know Extra Help does a lot of work with helping you on HR side of things. If you don't have a clearly defined performance plan for good performance, bad performance, you're putting yourself in a legal risk area of firing somebody that maybe you have not put through a good, solid performance plan with. Coaching, if your sales managers are doing deals, meaning they're out in they're basically working with your salespeople on helping them close deals, they're basically doing the work for the salespeople. Coaching is helping to teach people. It's one of the mechanisms of the process of training. So if I'm working with a salesperson, am I on a regular basis in the field with them? Do I ride with them? When I ride with them, am I in a telling mode or am I in an observation mode? Do I have a sales process to coach from? Do I have a clearly defined sales methodology to coach with? So how do I know what I'm supposed to do on a sales call if we don't have clearly defined what a good sales call looks like? Training is all about modeling. So if I'm a sales manager, am I the type of sales manager that I actually train my salespeople? Do I teach them what a good cold call sounds like? Do I do it, let them do it? Do I show them again and let them do it again? That's a good training model. Do I go out in the field with them? Do I show them what a good sales call sounds like and looks like? Do I show them how to deal with the toughest stalls and objections? Do I show them how to qualify, how to close, how to ask the tough questions? If I don't show them, how will I know that they know? And if I don't observe them, how will I know that they know? So if you ask yourself the question, do I do any modeling in order to train, and you don't, you're missing a huge opportunity to develop the competency. The second piece is, if you're going on a sales call and your idea of training is taking over the sales call, you really are missing the opportunity for them to learn. They will never develop competency if they're not making mistakes and they're not trying it and seeing what they need to change and recognizing what they need to change. The adult learning model, which is how we all learn, is based on 4 steps. The first step is recognition, which means I have to recognize there's something that I would do differently or something I need to learn. If there isn't some way for salespeople to fail or to observe, how can they learn and recognize? The second is knowledge. Are you giving them the knowledge that they need to be successful? Again, most salespeople are hired in, told to go sell, and never taught how to sell. How much are you missing there on salespeople that really have never been trained or coached? The third step is application. If I teach somebody something, they have to actually go try to use it. They either have to succeed with it or fail with it or learn that they need to improve on how they did it. But if I'm not applying it, I'm never able to move to the 4th stage of learning, which is competency. So how well are you, as in a sales management function, working with your salespeople to supervise them, coach them, train them, mentor them? Mentoring salespeople comes from being the best supervisor, coach, and trainer, because you earn the right to be a mentor. You can't tell people you're their mentor. They have to trust you, they have to respect you, and they have to see you as a resource to their success. If you're not doing the other 3 above that, how can you be seen as a mentor? The last piece of management is recruiting. How good of a job are you doing of ongoing recruiting on your sales team? It shouldn't be an event. It shouldn't be something where you wait until you need a salesperson to go find a salesperson. It should be an ongoing process, something that is embedded into the sales management day-to-day function. So, do you really have a sales manager? What is your core belief about sales management? The one that we hear more often than not is good salespeople don't need to be managed. If you believe that, I'm going to challenge you, and I said I would. It's a dangerous core belief, because good salespeople want to be coached and want to be managed. So the ones that are telling you they don't need to be managed, gut check question is, they're probably camping. Are you letting them camp? Sales managers do not manage sales. So if you've got sales managers that are managing deals and they're not managing people, that 17% effective number is probably not far from being accurate. And then you have to ask yourself if you're willing to walk by that piece of equipment, that organization, on a daily basis and allow it to be running at a 17% capacity. The 85% rule, that a good sales manager managing 5 or more salespeople is spending 85% of his or her time managing. If you're managing less than that, that number can be reduced. But if you're not at an 85% or in somewhere 75 to 85%, you're managing 5 or more salespeople, then you're probably in, again, a significantly reduced effectiveness percentage because of lack of focus on the people that you're managing. The most underutilized resource in most companies is the sales manager. That component of a sales organization is the single biggest opportunity and single biggest resource to grow the sales side of your business. Last chunk is your sales hiring process compromised. What does a sales mishire cost you? I don't know if anybody's ever looked at that number, but the average mishire, and this is from a book called Top Rating, so it's not our number, the average sales mishire costs a company anywhere from 14 to 24 times that person's first-year annual income. It's a scary number. So if you have a salesperson on the low end making $50,000, if you did the math and it was 10 times, you're talking about $500,000. That includes HR costs, training costs, opportunity costs, and the opportunity costs are obviously your biggest. Most people equate their costs to flat out what the expense was, but you're going to struggle significantly growing your business if you haven't recognized that risk and mitigate that risk, because you'll hire people that won't work, you'll fire them, you'll hire somebody else that may or may not work, and you're going to, through that process, you will have significant opportunities that you will not be able to optimize. So the three biggest hiring mistakes that most people make is that they're not really focused on, and they don't have the template or profile of the ideal salesperson. So when you think about your sales organization and you think about how you hire, could you paint a picture today of what the ideal salesperson needs to look like? What industry should they come from? How many years of experience? Is it a complex sale? Is it a tactical sale? Is it a value-based sale? Is it a commodity-based sale? Is it a service? Or is it a product? Is it selling to large customers? Is it selling to small customers? Is it selling to what decision level? Within what geography? How many years of experience do they need? What's the aptitude or the intellect required? Those are just a few of the criteria that help paint a picture. I get phone calls all the time from people saying, hey, I'm looking for a good salesperson. Do you know anybody? Think if I asked you that question today, how difficult it would be to answer that question. The reason it's so difficult, quite simply, is because if you don't know what a good salesperson means for that business, how could you possibly know what a good fit might be? So this is number 2 on the 3 biggest sales hiring mistakes is there's no formal interview process. So if there's no formal interview process, what often happens is that you have a manager who interviews a person, and they like them. Usually they like them because they feel pretty good about them. They're friendly, they're outgoing, they ask good questions, and typically what's the next step? I probably ask somebody in the company to interview them as well, maybe a third person. Then we all get together in a room, and I ask the question, if I'm the manager, hey, how'd you like my guy? I get a consensus, everybody likes the guy, and we go back and we hire him. What's missing from that? There's no ideal profile that tells me what I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for a certain set of traits and the other 2 people were looking for a different set of traits, or we're all just operating from gut and we liked the person, does that mean that that person can and will sell? Often the answer is no. The third one on hiring is I have no way of validating, no way of gaining evidence that this person meets my criteria. Still it goes back to I don't have any objective framework. I don't have a screening tool. I'm not doing evaluations or assessments. I don't have a clearly defined process and a set of questions I work from that help me validate that they meet these criteria. So I end up with I don't have a hiring process, too much emphasis on an interview that's a sales pitch, and I'm basing my decision on emotion and gut, and I create a huge risk for myself. So ask yourself the question, how well defined is your sales hiring process? And are you hiring A players or are you settling? Do you have a mindset that I can't hire A players in my organization, they're too expensive? Because the reality is there are A players in every income bracket out there. But unless you define what an A player is in your organization and in your income bracket, how will you find them? You'll settle for campers or quitters. So rule number one, no compromise. If you build a hiring process and you build a template, it should have a set of must-haves on it. And it means must-have. They must meet these criteria. And if somebody doesn't meet those criteria, they're out of the process. So don't compromise when it comes to hiring. It's the biggest opportunity you have to grow your organization, and it's where everything starts. So let's put it all together. Embedded sales mediocrity could be the single most damaging problem for small and medium-sized businesses today. It leads to a slow but oftentimes insidiously comfortable slide to disaster. And disaster can be described and defined in many different ways. Disaster can mean my sales are declining. Disaster can mean my organization and numbers are flat. Disaster could mean we're not growing at the level that we should be. So that's up to you to define what disaster is. But if you're living in that sales mediocrity, it's somewhat like a boiling frog. Has anybody ever boiled frogs? It's a simple recipe. Put a pot of water on the stove, turn on the water, drop the frog into the water. As the water boils, the frog gets more and more comfortable because it feels warm. Before you know it, they've boiled. The typical sales force is only 17% effective on an average day-to-day, primarily due to the lack of behavior and competency, and those issues are tactically endorsed by senior managers. So the question is, are you allowing your salespeople to do the wrong things, meaning not focus on the right behaviors? And are there competency issues, and have you identified them? And are you helping them fix them, or are you living with them and perpetuating them? The ultimate result is embedded sales mediocrity that becomes cultural and shapes the standards that propagate underperformance. This problem is most often not addressed until it's too late because owners and senior managers tend to overestimate the competency of the team. A camper culture prevails. Accountability issues are there in a significant way, and there's an absence of effective hands-on sales management. So CEO gut check. Is sales mediocrity embedded in your organization? What is it costing you? So ask yourself, is there enough core behavior time today in your organization? In other words, have you defined 3 to 5 of the core behaviors like tracking number of referrals, tracking the number of cold calls, tracking the number of meetings with new prospects, tracking the number of meetings with existing prospects, tracking the number of proposals, and tracking the number of closes? Is there a lack of sales competence, meaning are there salespeople that don't close? Are there salespeople that don't know how to qualify? Are there salespeople that don't know how to make a cold call? Are there salespeople that don't know how to prospect? Are buyers in control of the sales process? Are they dancing with the buyer rather than taking control? Are they putting a lot of quotes and proposals out there that aren't closing? Are they chasing a lot of business that they're never going to buy? Or are they actually controlling the process by asking good questions, by getting into a qualifying mode and understanding the impact of whatever problems they're having is going to have on their business in order to align any kind of solution to that? Is there a camper culture or a happy camper culture? Either one is dangerous. It equates to mediocrity. Is there an excuse mentality? I recently engaged with a company, it's actually been about a year ago, that when we evaluated the organization from the top down, the CEO to the sales team and the mid-level managers, most of the people in the organization had that responsibility weakness, which meant They were blaming the economy, the marketplace, and the industry for issues, and nobody was getting anything done. Are you living in that mentality of excuse-making, or are you taking responsibility, setting clear goals and objectives, and holding people accountable to them? Ineffective, underutilized sales management. Are you managing 75 to 85% of the time? Do you supervise, coach, train, mentor, and recruit effectively? Is there a compromised hiring process, or do you even have one? If not, your chances of hitting that 14 to 24 times number are significant. And is your bar set too low? Using that company I was just talking to you about, when we first met, they had set a goal for the next 3 years to have flat performance. As we whiteboarded their sales strategy, it became very clear. A $200 million company easily, over the course of 3 years, could be a $250 million company. But without evaluating where your opportunities are and developing a strategy for how to get there, it's often easy to look at a declining economy and an industry that's declining. So, deliverable for our time to get today. Look at your sales team with new eyes. Don't call the tail a leg, because reality is your best friend. If it's okay, or if you choose to accept your current condition, be comfortable with your decision to live with it. Don't question yourself if you've decided you're comfortable with it. If it's not okay, make a decision not to risk a slow death. Act on it and do something. If you choose action and you choose change, we can help. That's what we do. But it really takes a commitment to change. It takes a commitment to an investment of your time and a willingness to do things differently. So I appreciate you all being on the call today, and just wanted to throw out if there was any questions anybody might have at this point. Doesn't sound like it, so I hope it was a good use of everybody's time. Aaron, I appreciate you getting this set up for us today. And do you want to close us out, Aaron, or how do you want to wrap up?
I will wrap us up. Thank you very much for all the information. I found it very high in value, and I will definitely share some of that with our sales team. Very good presentation. It doesn't look like there is any questions, but we really appreciate you participating today, Suzie, and please join us for our next webinar. It's going to be on Thursday, May 16th at 1 p.m., and look for an invitation in your email. I appreciate everyone participating today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.